Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and let's break down the most recent news of the downed Ukrainian flight in Iran as there are building tensions regarding a potential war with Iran. Let's try to clear the air as much as possible. As we reported live on air several days ago when the news broke of the plane crash, allegedly at the time it was that this plane had taken off and crashed on takeoff, and it was a complete accident and wasn't tied to any shoot down or anything. Then photos came out of clearly shots fired through the fuselage, and aviation experts came out and said that it appears that Iran had accidentally shot down this airplane. And Iran initially, as this article from January 10th, just shortly ago, said Iran denies downing passenger plane with missile. Well, that all changed after Iran did indeed admit that it accidentally shot down the Ukrainian passenger jet, which has led to massive protests in the streets of Iran. Let me just make this clear, first of all, that I've made it clear that I thought it was kind of strange and unlikely that Iran had accidentally shot down this plane, but it's also highly unlikely that they did it on purpose. And let me explain. So the news started long ago with Iran, decades ago, with the U.S. aggression against Iran, the 1950s coup against Iran, the installation of their dictator, the Iranian hostage crisis, U.S. funding and arming the Ba'athist Party of Iraq against Iran to bring down Iran, which led to one of the bloodiest wars in history, which led to the Iran Air Flight 655, as you see on the screen here, which was shot down by the United States, allegedly accidentally at the end of the Iran-Iraq war. Now, carrying on, we can go all the way forward to last June of 2019, when there was the so-called Gulf of Oman attack on two ships in the Gulf of Oman, which were blamed on Iran, to which Iran denied any involvement in, and the owners of the ships themselves said that Iran was not involved in the attack on these ships. So that blew that story out the window, and go all the way forward into December of 2019, when an Iranian-backed militia that was killing ISIS in the region accidentally killed a U.S. contractor in Iraq, which led to the U.S. killing 25 of these Iranian militiamen, again, who were fighting ISIS in the region, and again, in Iraq, which led to a protest at the embassy, which led to the U.S. getting involved and kicking the protesters out of the embassy in Baghdad over the Tigris River out of the Green Zone, which also turned into them assassinating Qasem Soleimani, the top commander in Iran, which was in its own way, regardless of legalities, an act of war. Now, Iran responded by hitting a couple bases in Iraqi Kurdistan, where 1,500 troops, including U.S. and Canadian personnel, were situated, but they were warned ahead of time they got it out. It was more of just a warning fire, basically just their version of trying to get their aggression out or whatever. But nonetheless, at the exact same time as this plane went down, and this crash led to a lot of speculation right off the bat. This speculation I find to be very irresponsible in a lot of ways, but let me just put it this way. If Iran were to shoot down this plane on purpose, it would be suicide. It would be like them shooting themselves in the foot. Iran doesn't want war with the U.S. They would be destroyed. If Iran did it accidentally, that would mean that they have one of the worst missile defense systems ever. I mean, Tehran is one of the most busiest airports in that region, and there's like 100 flights or more coming off that tarmac every single day, nonstop. So the notion of Iran shooting it down accidentally is like, how does that even happen? That seems so absurd. Well, nonetheless, Iran has now admitted that they did accidentally shoot down this plane, and this has led to massive protests, as I mentioned previously. And As this article of the Daily Mail says, protesters in Tehran clash with riot police as they demand the Ayatollah resigns and call for regime change after Iran finally admits to shooting down jet and killing 176 people. Though, let's keep calm heads about this. There have been a lot of infiltrations and protests in the region before, and we can't forget what happened in Libya with the U.S. getting involved and creating clashes, getting involved in clashes, overthrowing Gaddafi after shaking hands with him, and basically seizing his gold and installing dictators and, funding and arming terrorists in the region, which turned into ISIL in the region. So, I mean, we could talk about that all day. Well, that's interesting to mention regarding this story out of the Daily Mail, which says, Britain's ambassador to Iran is arrested after photographing protesters in Tehran clash with riot police as they demand the Ayatollah resigns and call for regime change after Iran finally admits to shooting down jet and killing 176 people. By the way, many of those being Canadian, Winnipeggers, people from Edmonton, people from Britain, etc., Sweden, etc. Anyway, as this says, UK ambassador to Iran, Rob Macaire, was arrested tonight in Tehran for allegedly inciting protesters. The senior Foreign Office figure is believed to have now been freed, according to reports. Protests broke out at 4 universities in Tehran on Saturday after military admitted fatal blunder. Angry crowds demanded the Ayatollah's resignation and full investigation into the disaster. Regime forces cracked down hard on the demonstrators, firing tear gas into the crowds. Iranian air defense shot down civilian passenger plane carrying 176 people, most of them Iranian citizens. The country was on high alert after targeting U.S. forces with ballistic missiles in bloodless strike. Now, it's interesting that this is all happening. I mean, we reported months ago, before any of this really kicked off, that Iranians, protesters in the street, were being killed and did burn down one of Iran's central banks. But as per usual, the U.S. involvement and British involvement, I should say, is very sketchy at best. I mean, we can't forget that the Kurds were fighting and were about to overthrow Saddam Hussein in Iraq before the U.S. got involved. I was just in the Middle East. I talked to a Kurd who told me that. And, they were about to overthrow Saddam Hussein. The U.S. came in, took advantage of the situation, claimed responsibility for overthrowing Saddam Hussein, and then made the Kurds dependent on them, or else they were going to get, in a lot of trouble. The U.S. will just kill them, call them a terrorist organization, whatever it might be. So that's why the Kurds were annoyed when the U.S. left the region. But nonetheless, millions of people have died at the hands of the U.S. So they're saying, Soleimani worked with the Taliban. So did the U.S. The U.S. armed and funded the Taliban. The U.S. has been working with the Taliban for decades, including recently, as Trump had even said that he was working with the Taliban in the region to come to some sort of deal. I mean, Soleimani worked with the Taliban, might have killed several hundred people, according to, mainstream media and the Pentagon, which I can't trust as far as I can throw them. And it's a very heavy building. I cannot throw them. But nonetheless, I mean, the U.S. utilized the Taliban for years, armed and funded them, welcomed them in the White House, armed and funded Al-Qaeda, the Mujahideen, armed and funded ISIS, armed and funded ISIL, the Muslim Brotherhood, etc. Let's go back. The U.S. propped up Hitler against the Communist Party, propped up the USSR against Hitler, armed and funded the Mujahideen, later Al-Qaeda, against the USSR. They create order out of chaos, folks, and we cannot forget that. Millions of people have died, and we just keep continuing this insanity, this massive charade, and no one seems to question why. People that were against mainstream media moments ago suddenly are like, well, mainstream media says Iran's the enemy, so we need to go after them. Iran's one of the only stable places in the region left after the U.S. destroyed the region. If people want to overthrow their government, I'm not saying the Iranian government's good, because they are not, but if people want to overthrow the Iranian regime, leave it to the people on the ground. Don't infiltrate, don't instigate, don't bomb them, and then arm and fund terrorists. It seems to go without saying, but nonetheless, we are dealing with the perpetuation of the military-industrial complex here, something that's gone on for so long. Millions have died. The Afghanistan papers just leaked and showed that the whole war was based on a lie. as we were saying, while people are calling us un-American and terrorist lovers and all that, when we were calling it out years ago. And the Syrian dossier, the so-called sexed up Syrian dossier, which proves that it was based on a lie in order to try to go to war with Assad in the region, and in that document showing that Assad didn't gas his own people. I mean, how many times do we have to go through this, folks? It's just so insane, but we can just keep repeating. The Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. Soleimani worked with the Taliban. The U.S. worked with the Taliban. The U.S. worked with Al-Qaeda. The U.S. worked with ISIS. I mean, come on. What a stupid excuse to get involved in another country's affair. Talk about big government, talk about globalism, talk about the military-industrial complex. That's not 4D chess, that's absurdity. Let them overthrow their leaders themselves if they wish to do that, and hopefully not replace them with more of the same. But that's how democracy and government in general works. It's organized crime. But as this article says, Trudeau outraged and furious after Iran's admission over jetliners downing. Okay, well, regardless of furor, I still have a really hard time believing that they accidentally did this or did it on purpose. Either way, it just seems so absurd to me. But hey, they said they did it, so I'll leave it at that. But carrying on, as this article notes from CBC state-run media in Canada, I should note, it says, admitting to downing Ukraine jetliner will cost Iran regime dearly. And it says, Iran admits IRGC shot down Flight 752, ending regime Soleimani PR bonanza. And as it goes into here, it was short-lived honeymoon for the Islamic Republic regime, a rare wave of popular support, drowned out by a bigger tide of government neglect and recklessness. Just hours after angrily calling the allegation that Iranian surface-to-air missile took down Ukraine International Airlines Flight PS-752, a big lie, a psychological warfare, Iran's regime has had to confess that the Revolutionary Guard Corps it has lately been lionizing in mass rallies itself fired the fatal missile. Though it doesn't look like a missile hit, it just looks like a bunch of bullet holes. I don't know, whatever. Continuing on, it says, much as Iran's authorities may hate admitting the fact to other governments, they are almost certainly more concerned about the reaction from their own people. The regime's hopes of turning the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani into a moment of renewal for its flagging fortunes were destroyed along with Flight PS-752. From the point of view of the Ayatollah's regime, this situation is a nightmare scenario of incompetence, hypocrisy, and lost opportunity. And then it goes into Iran Flight 655 and how a while back ago, Javad Zarif said on Twitter, July 3rd, 1988, U.S. ship shot down IR-655, killing 290 civilians. Ship captain was awarded medal for murdering innocents. Iranians won't forget. And you can also see this tweet from Hassan Rouhani that says, those who refer to the number 52 should also remember the number 290. IR-655 never threatened the Iranian nation. So anyway, again, the U.S. government is terrible. The Iranian government is terrible. All governments are terrible. They're using people as pawns to sacrifice for the king and the queen. And we can't forget that. And also, it's interesting, after millions and millions have died in Iraq, for example, based on a lie, by the way, weapons of mass destruction. Okay, well, funny, because you guys are the only ones that funneled over weapons of any kind of mass destruction to Iraq in the first place to take out Iran in a proxy war. Anyway, carry on. As it says here, Iraq asks U.S. to make plans to withdraw forces, and the Iraqi government, their parliament actually voted to kick the U.S. government out of Iraq. And it's funny because, you know, the U.S. says they were there to spread democracy and freedom, but then people vote to kick out the U.S. government, and they're like, actually, never mind, because as it says here, Trump says U.S. troops won't leave unless Iraq pays for airbase. Just taxation is theft, more government, organized crime, more globalism. Get out of the region! Get out of the region! Period. End stop. Get out. Get out. Millions have died. And it just keeps continuing. Thousands, tens of thousands of children have died. And all these people that are like, we stand for children, we stand for life, we stand for freedom, we stand for nationalism, not globalism. They're in the Middle East, in countries they've never been to, outside of their little bubbles, that they have no idea what's going on there. They have no idea the peaceful people there. I was just in the Middle East, the most amazing peaceful people. There's obvious problems, political and cultural problems, but that's none of my business and none of the business of the United States government, who prides himself on having such great culture and great, belief systems and principles, murdering millions of people. And what, arming and funding terrorists, and that just destabilizes a region? I mean, think of the torture and the conflict that the United States government, military-industrial complex, Britain, France, Germany have caused in that region. When will it end? Well, apparently from president to president, people forget about that, don't care anymore, and just keep perpetuating the same issue over and over again. This article here is called How the U.S. Wages War to Prop Up the Dollar, and it notes some very interesting aspects that I think are important to note in this video. As it says, basically, the U.S.'s propensity for driving up massive budget deficits has created a need for immense amounts of deficit spending. This can be handled through selling lots of government debt or through monetizing the debt. But what if there isn't enough global demand for U.S. debt? That would mean the U.S. would have to pay more interest on its debt, or the U.S. could monetize the debt through the central bank, but that might cause the value of the dollar to crash. So the U.S. regime realized that it must find ways to prevent the glut of dollars and debt from actually destroying the value of the dollar. Fortunately for the regime, this can be partly managed, it turns out, through foreign policy. Hudson continues, as it says, the solution to the problem of maintaining the demand for dollars turned out to be replace gold with U.S. Treasury securities, IOUs, at the basis of foreign central bank reserves. After 1971, foreign central banks had little option for what to do with their continuing dollar inflows, except to recycle them to the U.S. economy by buying U.S. Treasury securities. The effect of U.S. foreign military spending thus did not undercut the dollar's exchange rate and did not even force the Treasury and Federal Reserve to raise interest rates to attract foreign exchange to offset the dollar outflows on military account. In fact, U.S. foreign military spending helped finance the domestic U.S. federal budget deficit. An important piece of this strategy has been continued alliance with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia maintains the world's largest capacity for oil production, and it was the largest single producer for crude for most of this period from the mid-1970s to 2018, when the U.S. surpassed both Saudi and Russia. And it just goes into all these pointers. You can look up the article for yourself. It's called, from the Mises Institute, How the U.S. Wages War to Prop Up the Dollar. The U.S. dollar is not doing well, folks. It's all fake. It's all nonsense, as it always has been. The currency is printed out of thin air, charges interest on the debt to the taxpayer, extorts them for 50% of their income to pay off the interest on the debt while blowing up babies in the Middle East. And on top of that, it's under social contract usury. So that's the biggest fraud of all. Causes inflation to go up, creates mass poverty, and then people ask for government to fix those problems, perpetuating that problem forever, like wages, etc. It has nothing to do with wages. It has to do with the value of the currency. So I think that's really important to point out. Anyway, I wanted to go into all this stuff because I think it's incredibly important that we look at the long term here. For example, this article from, I know, CNN of all places. I know I can't stand CNN, but it says, 2015 memo from Eric Prince to Trump campaign. National disgrace at Soleimani not already dead. General Wesley Clark made the point clear years ago that there was a 7-country plan over a certain period of time with ending in Iran. There's also the Greater Israel Project, which has been in order for a long time. That was the attempt to grow the Israeli state, super state, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is the Greater Israel Project, takes over much of the region, takes over much of Mesopotamia. Anyway, I wanted to go into all this because it's important, because we need to have a full understanding of what creates these problems and not come in with the fear reaction and have the solution be more problems that perpetuate this situation forever. We've been lied to over and over again. Do not accept war under any pretenses. The government is at war with you. It's not about other governments going to war with you. It's your government is going to war with you, no matter where in the world you are, and that's up to you to decide your fate, freedom, individual responsibility, responsibility, free will, don't allow these states, these organized crime rackets called government, to extort you and then come in as a solution while further enslaving you into servitude to them. They love servitude. They build themselves off servitude. They cannot survive without servitude. So anyway, understand that, accept that, decentralize everything, free your mind, free yourself, free your money, and don't allow yourself to fall for more of these tricks, for thousands of soldiers to die, trillions of dollars to be spent, and again, millions of innocent human beings to be killed. You might not know those human beings. It doesn't matter. Those are human beings walking on the street with bombs dropping on their heads, destroying them, and then their families get armed and funded with great extremism and Wahhabism by the U.S. government and other military-industrial complex hands. So we need to call this out. We need to shoo the rats out of the shed, and we need to break free as free human beings. Remember, who's in jail here? Not the people who were laughing on camera in the WikiLeaks leaks after dropping bombs on kids and blowing up kids, all on camera. It was the people who leaked that. It was Chelsea Manning. It was Julian Assange. Those are the people in prison. Julian Assange is currently dying. Free Julian Assange. Anyway, as per usual, this video will be demonetized and censored heavily and shadow banned. So make sure to check those links below. Get your No War in Iran t-shirt at our Teespring store. Help us out any way you can. Help spread free information online by supporting independent medias. There's many options. Patreon, GoFundMe, Subscribestar, float.app, flote.app, where you can find us when YouTube inevitably deletes this channel. Anyway, I appreciate all you peace-loving people out there that don't support, the destruction of freedom, destruction of liberty. Remember, as Ben Franklin said, if you're willing to give up a little bit of liberty for a little bit of temporary security, you will get and you will deserve neither. Remember that. Take it to the bank. Anyways, guys, I appreciate everyone joining. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change. Like what you see here, Wham! Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale. So make sure to find us on float.app. That's flote.app. At Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.